Rain clung to the windows of Manhattan's steel bones like tears too proud to fall. Morning hadn't fully arrived yet, just hints of it pressed against the skyline, casting everything in a cold, silver haze. Inside the high-rise temple of Hawthorne Holdings, the silence of money echoed in the marble lobby and glass-walled offices, and then, it happened. A paper coffee cup slipped. Fingers numb from the morning chill. The lid popped off. Brown liquid cascaded over a sleek black sleeve. A gasp, sharp, breathless. A man turned in that frozen instant, 2 lives fractured. She was just the temp. The girl with rain-soaked shoes. And fraying sleeves. Elsie. Blonde, 26, and already carrying the weight of too many hard winters. Hired the day before, badge still warm from the printer. She didn't belong on the 81st floor, not really. Not among people who wore timepieces worth more than her college debt. But she smiled anyway. Because sometimes hope is all you have, and he? Grayson Holt. CEO. Billionaire. Born into capital and concrete. Raised by a man who barked lessons over dinner and a mother who vanished into her own silence. At 37, Grayson didn't yell. He didn't need to. His stare alone was verdict and sentence. No second chances. Not in his world. So when the coffee hit his tailored sleeve, he looked at her. Just looked. And then turned to security. That was it. Elsie was gone before the coffee even cooled. She didn't cry in the elevator. She didn't beg. She simply disappeared like thousands do in the underbelly of cities that never sleep. But something was wrong and Grayson couldn't stop thinking about her. That flash of recognition in her eyes. Not fear, something deeper. Something old. That night, sleep refused to come. He wandered the echoing halls of his penthouse, pulled by something he couldn't name. In the back of a closet, beneath old tax files and untouched sweaters, sat a box of childhood journals. He hadn't opened them since his mother left. He reached for one. Worn, bent, its cover scribbled with a childish, private, in red crayon. He opened to a random page. There, in crooked letters, Elsie says when the thunder is too loud. I should listen to the rain instead. He stared, flipped again. Elsie let me hide in her attic when Dad yelled again. She gave me a cookie and played Mozart. The handwriting, his. The name, hers. Elsie, not just a name. A person. A ghost from his past with a hand once warm on his trembling shoulder. It couldn't be coincidence. Could it? He fired her. He erased her, and now, he wasn't sure if he had just destroyed the only piece of his childhood that had ever been kind. He searched the building the next day, but she was gone. No forwarding info. Temp agency couldn't find her. It was as if she never existed, but she had. She had. He remembered now. She had freckles on her right cheek and always smelled like cinnamon. She called him Gray when no one else dared. The past wasn't finished with him, and neither was she. The days that followed blurred together in numbers, meetings, and mergers. But beneath the surface of Grayson Holt's empire, a fracture had formed. One spill. One girl. One name pulled from the dust of a forgotten attic. The weight of memory pressed against the glass walls of his success like a breath on cold glass, fragile, fogged, and undeniable. Elsie. She'd vanished before the system could remember her. No full name on file. Just an agency barcode and a wiped badge. The front desk didn't recall her face. The cleaning crew hadn't seen her leave. And in Grayson's world, if you weren't in the system, you didn't exist, but he knew better now. He remembered her laugh. The way it filled the corners of his childhood like light through a cracked door. He remembered her attic, dusty, warm. A kingdom of blanket forts and classical music, far from his father's angry voice. She'd been older. Not by much, but enough to feel like a guardian. A tether to something gentle. Then she disappeared, just like now. Had it really been her? He needed to be sure. Grayson canceled 2 board meetings and had his security team pull every second of footage from that morning. No sound. Just grainy black and white. The elevator opened. She stepped out. Hair damp, coat clutched close. Then, the coffee. Then the look. For the first time, he watched himself turn away, watched the guards take her by the elbow, polite but firm. She didn't resist. She just nodded and left. Like she expected it. He paused. The video zoomed in there. The frame, her face, tilted toward him, searching his eyes. Not pleading. Not panicked, recognizing the memory burned hotter now. A thunderstorm. A cracked window. His hands over his ears. A hand, her hand, on his shoulder. Her voice telling him to breathe. He had cried in her lap. She braided his hair. Like a sister. She promised the world wouldn't always be loud. What happened to her? Grayson's team expanded the search. They reached out to the temp agency, who claimed no record of a worker by that name. A glitch, they said. Happens sometimes. He knew better. There were no glitches in his company. Someone had erased her. Or she had erased herself. Why? One evening. Restless, he returned to the journals. He read them in order now. Page by page. The story of a lonely boy and the girl who had shown him kindness. They'd met in upstate New York, at his grandfather's crumbling estate, long before money taught him how to disappear. She'd lived next door. Her parents were artists. Poor. She wore clothes with holes and shoes with talking saws, but she always brought him stolen moments of joy. Then one day, she was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. His mother told him not to ask. That she wasn't coming back. That it was complicated. Now, nearly 3 decades later, she had returned. And he had thrown her away. Was she testing him, trying to remind him of what he lost, or had fate simply offered one impossible second chance, and he failed to recognize it in time? Grayson took the elevator down alone that night. No driver. No staff. Just the hum of Manhattan and the weight of too many questions. He walked. In the rain. Past faces and taxis and the ever-turning lights of a city too busy to care. And yet, somewhere in its arteries, she was out there. Alive. Real. He had to find her, not for guilt, not even for redemption, but because something inside him had finally cracked wide open, and if he didn't follow it now, he might never find peace again. A billionaire can find anyone, except the people who don't want to be found. Grayson Holt was used to results. When he said search, the world obeyed. But Elsie wasn't in the system. She was between lines, in the margins of databases and forgotten paper trails. The kind of person invisible to the machine he'd spent his life perfecting. So he started over. Like the boy she once knew. Curious. Unsure. Human. He went back to where it began. The estate upstate still stood. Barely. His grandfather's house had become a skeleton, boards nailed over windows, ivy choking brick, silence dripping from the eaves. It smelled of mildew and mothballs and ghosts. The caretaker was gone. Just a rusted lock and a path overgrown. Grayson stepped through the wild grass and opened the door with a key he hadn't touched in 20 years. Dust exploded into the light. Like memory breaking apart, inside, echoes whispered his name. The library where he used to hide under chairs. The kitchen where he first tasted cinnamon toast. And the window on the second floor, shattered now, where she once waved to him from her side of the fence. That house was gone. The fence still stood, though broken. Beyond it, a cottage once held the family of color and chaos that had shared the land. He remembered the sounds, piano keys, laughter, paintbrushes striking canvas late into the night. Her parents were strange to his father. Dangerous. Poor. Beautiful. He crossed the property line. The cottage was hollowed. Fire had taken the roof years ago. All that remained were charred beams and broken stone. Nature had reclaimed it like it was never meant to stay. In the ashes, he found a scorched tricycle. A melted music box. A photo frame with glass long gone. No faces. Just a hand, hers, clutching a daisy chain. Grayson stood there for hours. He didn't cry. He hadn't in years. But something shifted inside him. A memory too heavy to hold. When he returned to the city, he changed his tactics. No more power plays. No lawyers. No hired eyes. Instead, he wrote. He took out a pen and filled the pages of a leather notebook with every word he never said. Every moment she gave him. Every kindness he never repaid. He wrote like it mattered. Like she could hear it in the wind. Then he had it published, not under his name. Not in glossy press. But as a letter. An anonymous column tucked inside the back page of an old literary journal still printed in Brooklyn. Circulation, small. Audience, Artists, Wanderers, the forgotten. It was titled simply, To the Girl in the Attic, I Remember You Now. He told no one. He just waited, and weeks passed, until, one morning, a package appeared at his penthouse door wrapped in brown paper. No return address, inside, a single thing, a music tape, Mozart. Cracked from age. The same kind she used to play. No note. No explanation, but he knew she had seen it, she was alive, and maybe, just maybe, she was listening. The tape didn't play at first. It whirred, stuttered, then fell silent in the old stereo system Grayson hadn't touched in years. But he didn't throw it away. He sat beside it on the floor, knees drawn to his chest, and waited as if the sound would eventually rise from it like smoke from a long dead fire. Hours passed, the city breathed around him, horns below. Wind against glass, his phone buzzing in rooms he no longer entered, but he waited, and then it began. A soft hum. Distorted. Broken at the edges. But unmistakable. Mozart's Piano Sonata No. 16, the same piece Elsie had once played on a warped cassette during a storm. When he was a boy. When he'd thought the thunder might split the sky. When she held his hand and told him music was proof the world could be gentle. Now it was back, just a melody. But enough. It meant one thing, she knew, she remembered, and she hadn't disappeared, not completely. She had simply chosen a different kind of silence. One she controlled. Grayson played the tape every night. Let it fill the penthouse until the walls felt less cold. He worked less. Slept more. Ate real food. Read old poetry. For the first time in his adult life, he slowed down. Because somewhere out there, the girl who saved him was no longer a ghost, and he didn't want to scare her away. Still, she left. No name. No return address. Just the tape. But something shifted again a week later. A second package. No music this time. Just a photo. Old. Grainy. Two children crouched in a treehouse built from warped planks and crooked nails. Him, young, soft, scared. And her. Smiling. Blonde. Barefoot. Holding his hand like she always had. He had forgotten the photo existed. On the back, one line written in pencil, I didn't disappear. You just stopped looking. He stared at it for a long time. It wasn't blame. It was truth, she had always been there. In the margins of his memory. In the softness he buried beneath spreadsheets and contracts and 10-year acquisition plans. In the warmth he dismissed as childish. He'd replaced her with boardrooms and brand deals and sterile views of a city that never loved him back, and when she reappeared, when she spilled that coffee, he hadn't seen her. He saw a mistake. An interruption. A mess to erase, and he did. It made him sick now. He pulled out another journal. A fresh one. No leather. Just paper and hope. And he began again. This time, he didn't write to apologize. He wrote to remember. Each entry was a story. A piece of their past. The time she rescued a bird. The way she painted stars on his rain boots so he'd feel brave. The night she stayed up with him until the thunder stopped. He filled the pages, sealed them, and sent them back, to the same journal that printed his first letter. Another message for her. For anyone who might be her. For the woman behind the music and the photograph. He didn't ask her to forgive him. He asked her to meet him where their story had ended, not to start over, but to remember where it began. The winter thaw came late that year. Snow lingered in the gutters like forgotten promises, gray and tired. Grayson stood in the middle of it, coat undone, collar turned up, staring at the skeleton of the treehouse where two children once hid from storms and fathers and the silence of empty homes. It had taken weeks to find her trail. She hadn't returned a letter. No address ever surfaced. No number rang. But one day, in the back of another copy of the same journal he'd written to, a page was folded and tucked in like a secret. No signature. Just 3 words, handwritten in blue ink, it's still there. He knew exactly what that meant. So here he stood, back where their world began. Behind the old estate, beyond the broken fence, the tree still stood. Gnarled and ancient, bark torn from lightning strikes and time. And there, high above, faded but real, the crooked platform they'd once called the Sky House. It was smaller than he remembered. Funny how childhood made everything larger. The ladder was gone. The rope frayed. But the bones of it remained, boards warped with memory, a rusted tin can still nailed to a beam like some forgotten artifact of a summer long past, and tucked inside, resting on one of the boards like it had never left, was a tin lunchbox. He climbed without hesitation. Inside the box, another note. Faded photos. A dried daisy. One of his old drawings. And a folded page torn from a school notebook. He opened it with shaking hands. I thought you forgot me. Maybe that's unfair. I used to watch you on magazine covers. In news feeds. Everywhere. And every time I saw your face, I wondered if you still carried the boy I knew, or if he'd been traded for suits and stock tickers. When I spilled the coffee, I wanted to believe you'd remember. But all I saw was a stranger. And I thought, he's gone. But then, your letter. Not to the world. To me. The boy I loved as a brother. The boy who listened to Mozart and traced stars with a flashlight on the ceiling of my attic. I never wanted to disappear. Life just pushed me sideways. But I'm still here. And maybe, so are you. He sat there for hours, not reading. Just breathing, holding the note like it might slip away again. Elsie wasn't offering a reunion, she was offering the truth. They were strangers now, shaped by years. Pain, distance. But beneath it, under the noise, the child versions of themselves still waited in that attic, in that treehouse, in the silence between thunderclaps, and for the first time in his life, Grayson didn't want to own, fix, or buy anything. He just wanted to be. He left a letter in the lunchbox. Not pages. Just a single line, I remember the stars. Then he climbed down, and left the box exactly where it was. Maybe she'd come back, maybe she'd already been there, standing in the woods, watching, deciding. It didn't matter. Some love stories aren't romantic, some are the kind that save your life quietly, once in childhood, again in the ruins of adulthood, and sometimes, just remembering is enough. Spring arrived without ceremony. It slid in under clouds and through cracks in the pavement, quiet and unapologetic. New buds sprouted from dead branches, the river thawed in slow surrender, and even the city, so practiced in indifference, softened at the edges. And Grayson Holt waited, not in meetings, not in boardrooms, but in life. He let go of the schedule, of the empire he built to keep himself from feeling. He stopped chasing profits and started chasing mornings. He read, walked, listened. Sometimes he stood at the window for hours, watching the rain, just like he used to, when she told him the sound could make the world feel safe. Days passed like chapters, the lunchbox remained untouched. Or maybe not. Some mornings, he thought it had been moved, just slightly, angled differently beneath the eaves of the treehouse. Once, he swore there was a new flower pressed beside his last letter. Another time, a piece of blue thread, like the kind she once used to sew the hems of her dresses, fluttered in the wind near the ladder stump, but he never saw her, not fully, until the morning she walked through the garden. It was still early. The dew clung to wild grass. The estate lay behind him like a forgotten photograph, the treehouse above him still half asleep. And then, there she was, a blonde. Thinner than he remembered. Her hair shorter. Her posture quieter, but it was her Elsie. She didn't speak. Neither did he. She simply stood across from him, one hand in her coat pocket, the other holding a daisy, fresh, white, trembling slightly in the breeze, and in that silence, everything returned: the attic, the Mozart, the boy and girl hiding from a world too loud, too cruel, too broken to hold them. He took a step forward, not to fix the past. Not to reclaim something lost, but to honor it. She met him halfway. No dramatic embraces. No confessions. Just two people, once children, now grown. Carrying years like water, heavy, necessary, purifying. They sat beneath the treehouse and listened to the birds. To the creak of old wood. To the heartbeat of a story that had been paused, never erased. He offered her the letter he had written weeks before but never sent. She didn't open it. Just held it, carefully, as though it might dissolve in her hands. And when the breeze picked up, she finally looked at him, not the billionaire, not the man in the headlines, but him, the boy who remembered the stars. She smiled, and it wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. It was something better. A beginning, not of romance, not of fairy tale, But of a truth they had both lost and now, somehow, had found again. Not all wounds heal cleanly. Not all stories finish in neat lines. But some people are meant to return, not to stay forever, but to remind us who we were. Before the world told us who we had to be. As the sun climbed higher, they parted again. No promises. No contact exchanged, just the understanding that something had been returned, repaired, released. And Grayson Holt, once a boy, once a man of marble and silence, walked back toward the city, not with regret, but with peace.